Have you ever actually stopped to think about the incredible gap at the very top of the financial ladder? I mean, there's a massive, and I mean massive, psychological divide between folks making a few $100,000 a year and those building a net worth in the tens of millions. We're literally talking about an entirely different stratosphere of wealth here. So today in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how that gap is created and, more importantly, how it's maintained.
You know, most people look at extreme self-made American wealth and they immediately jump to the conclusion that it just has to be a stroke of overnight luck, right? Or maybe some kind of rare innate talent, or a massive tech inheritance. But if you actually look at the data and study the daily lives of the ultra-wealthy, you'll find a completely different reality. It's a reality rooted in 3 incredibly boring but highly structured daily rituals.
But hey, before you think this sounds super easy, consider this massive drop-off rate. 99%. Yet while these 3 habits might sound simple on paper, they require an intense, almost crazy level of discipline. In practice, 99% of people quit trying to build these systems within a single month. The secret isn't some magic pill, it's an almost painful level of consistency.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is the roadmap of the 3 distinct habits we'll be breaking down today: the time arbitrage rule, asymmetric risk-taking, and aggressive mindset filtering. Let's kick things off with habit number 1, the time arbitrage rule. So to really grasp time arbitrage, we have to look at the stark contrast in how different income levels view a working hour. Average earners typically trade their time directly for money. Basically, if they don't punch a clock for a specific hour, they simply don't get paid. Millionaires and billionaires? Well, they view time through a completely different lens. They treat time as compounding capital. They aren't just spending their hours, they're investing them to build systems that keep generating value long after that initial hour has passed. So how do they actually do this in the real world? Well, they rely on a crucial productivity framework called time blocking. This means dedicating highly specific, absolutely uninterrupted 90-minute zones to deep focus. And I mean ruthlessly protecting their schedules during these blocks. Phones are away, random emails are completely ignored. They use this time strictly for high-leverage activities. You know, things like designing a new software funnel or researching real estate investments, instead of just getting bogged down in daily administrative chores.
And that brings us to the absolute ultimate takeaway for this first habit. They don't manage money, they manage leverage. By using those 90-minute zones to build systems that essentially run themselves, they create incredible leverage that allows their initial time investment to compound indefinitely.
Moving right along to habit number 2, asymmetric risk-taking.
Think for a second about your own conditioning when it comes to financial risk. When you hear the word risk, do you lean into it or do you run for the hills? The wealthy actively hunt for what are known as asymmetric opportunities. These are situations where the downside is strictly capped, but the upside, it's virtually limitless. If things go south, you know exactly how much you stand to lose, just a small, controlled amount. But if things go right, there's literally no ceiling on the gains. The math is completely weighted in your favor over the long run.
See, the middle class is deeply conditioned to avoid risk at all costs. They desperately seek safety, but total safety often just guarantees financial stagnation. The wealthy, on the other hand, definitely don't blindly gamble. Instead, they place small, calculated bets. They're always looking for those asymmetric setups where taking a loss absolutely won't break them financially, but hitting a win, that will completely alter their trajectory forever.
So, what do these vehicles actually look like? Well, these calculated bets usually take the form of assets, equities, or side projects. Think along the lines of funding a small startup venture or maybe acquiring a low-cost piece of digital real estate. You invest a strictly capped amount of time or capital. If it totally fails, you move on without a scratch. But because the upside is limitless, a single massive win in just one of these categories is literally enough to completely fund a lifetime of wealth. And that brings us to our final habit, number 3, aggressive mindset filtering. Okay, it's time to completely dismantle the popular illusion that billionaires just grind out 80-hour work weeks simply to collect a larger paycheck. That is just a fundamental misunderstanding of how they operate. Their actual day-to-day reality involves saying no to 99% of opportunities, invitations, and distractions. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept. They practice aggressive rejection so they can fiercely guard that tiny 1% slice, that absolute yes. They are reserving all their energy strictly for the very few actions that actually move the needle. By aggressively filtering out 99% of the noise, they recover a massive amount of time.
And where exactly does all that saved time go? They reinvest it heavily, right back into the highest yielding asset they will ever own, their own brain. That means prioritizing physical health, practicing emotional mastery, and committing to continuous upskilling. They absolutely know that an hour spent analyzing market trends, meditating, or exercising yields returns that far outpace an hour spent mindlessly clearing out an email inbox. To spot those asymmetric risks and build those automated systems, their mind has to be incredibly sharp.
So, when you put it all together, a very clear picture starts to emerge. True wealth is not some overnight explosion of success. It is the invisible compounding of tiny, daily changes. It's about ruthlessly protecting those 90-minute deep work zones, constantly placing small calculated bets, and fiercely filtering your mindset day in and day out until the results are simply undeniable.
So I want to leave you with a direct challenge to reflect on everything we've unpacked in this explainer today. Which of these 3 habits are you implementing today? Are you going to start time blocking your schedule? Are you going to seek out an asymmetric risk? Or are you going to finally start saying no to the 99% of noise? Really think about it. Commit to just one and let us know your focus in the comments below. And hey, be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of wealth.